Welcome to Finlos Teaches. This episode will address a subject that can be very sensitive, and that is the banning of books from classrooms and public libraries. But that sensitivity exists because of the real issues that aren't being discussed in the open, those being teacher autonomy, student independence, and parental control. Well, I should say that parental control is clearly being demonstrated, or else we wouldn't be having this conversation. But how that control is exercised and what the consequences on the health of public education could be are being overlooked. And educators who try to voice concerns about those consequences often feel that they are ignored, silenced, or put themselves at risk for merely asking the questions. So on one side you have teachers, licensed college-educated professionals saying they should be able to use their best judgment, expertise, and experience to guide the selection of materials. Also with the understanding that many, or maybe even most, districts have material adoption policies in place which include parental and administrative input. And on the other, you have a small but vocal group of guardians who feel that their objections, most frequently based on moral or spiritual grounds, should be able to supersede the adoption process for all students in a given area, be that a school, a county, or a state. In many ways, this argument reflects the larger state of discourse in the United States. Frequently, it seems people are more ready to choose sides and fight in a zero-sum engagement, rather than consider what is at stake and what is the potential for collateral damage. And maybe that's the point. I would like to introduce Adam Tritt into this conversation. He is an AP and Advanced English teacher in Brevard County, Florida. He is also an elected official who sits on the Brevard County Soil and Water Conservation District. Recently, the local chapter of a group called the Moms for Liberty began to challenge the use of Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, a classic and commonly used book in advanced English high school courses across the country, for what it deems inappropriate or pornographic content. Many teachers, Tritt included, were outraged, so he decided to begin a fundraising campaign through GoFundMe, the goal of which is to purchase copies of Slaughterhouse-Five and other challenged books and distribute them to young people in the community. Tritt insists that books would be free and only given to students of appropriate age and those accompanied by guardians. Once the Brevard chapter of Moms Against Liberty discovered his campaign, they shared screenshots of Tritt's posts regarding the fundraiser to its Facebook page late last month, according to the newspaper Florida Today. While it may not have been their intent, what resulted was a string of insults and derogatory comments, including that he is a groomer. I want to be clear here. The concern raised about Slaughterhouse-Five was that it contained pornography. Specifically, if you flip through the book, you will find a simplistic illustration of bare breasts. Google it if you're curious, or just simply imagine a series of semicircles, one inside the other, and you'll have a very good idea of the detail of this drawing. Without context, one could easily mistake the image as rush drawings of vinyl records or CDs. Meanwhile, the book does include some rather outdated misogynistic ideas about marriage and how fathers treat their daughters. Many of the books that are being challenged have content that is worthy of questions and conversation, but have a conversation. Be curious. Engage with the teachers. Ask for clarification. Raise your concerns. Demand context. Rigor requires that students sometimes engage with content that challenges their understanding, their experiences, and even potentially their beliefs. Rigor is what yields students who are able to think independently because they can hold complexity. This is the frustration that many teachers experience with this debate. We don't want to tell your child what to think or that how they've been raised is wrong. We want them to observe the vastness of human experience, both the pleasant and unpleasant aspects, the sometimes messy, but also meritorious. This is the struggle that Adam addresses in this interview. Yeah, I mean, let's dive right into it. So, I mean, tell me about your day today since this news story came out in the Florida Today. What's been going on?
Well, what's happened so far is the GoFundMe has gone from 1,400 to 7,200 and change. And I think this might go past the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I've been contacted by Equality Florida. What can we do to help? Where can we go? Where should we show up? And I was contacted by the Vonnegut Museum and Library.
Congratulations.
And so I'm contacted by them today, and they want me to, for graduation day, which they do every year,
Mm-hmm.
and they do a reading of his commencement speech. I'll be reading this along with Lewis Black and a bunch of other people.
Wow.
And also, what can we do to help? What can we do? Would you like some books? Why don't we just show up there at the school board meeting? Maybe we'll stand outside the schools and hand out his books.
Let's make some noise.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. You know, it is happy to it is a happy thing to see that when there are people who are standing up for, you know, what you believe in, that like-minded folks will find a way to support you. So I'm that's exciting to see. And when I was, you know, prepping for getting on this call, and I saw that GoFundMe page, and I was looking at just this morning the screenshot from the news article. I was like, yeah, that's a big jump. So congratulations.
It is. Lord, it's going to be work. That's fine. That's fine. It's just not what I expected.
For sure. So before we get too much further into this, can you introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Yes. My name is Adam Tritt. I'm a instructor, AP, English Language and Composition. I've taught college as well. Presently, I also teach AP and Honors English, speech and debate, creative writing, such. I'm an author. Nothing as much as Vonnegut's done, but hey, you know, he did say, "You art no matter what." So I art. I'm also an elected official, Soil and Water Commissioner here in Brevard County. That's really all there is to me. I'm not very interested.
Well, I think that, well, I'm sure that there's a lot of challenges to that, but we'll leave that to another conversation. So I want to just ask a few questions, and feel free to go wherever you'd like with your thoughts. There's no real format to this, but as an elected official, and you're in Brevard, that's correct?
Yes.
How do you see the politics intersecting with education, and is that problematic?
Politics here are polar. They even want even bipartisan races. They want to know what party you're part of. So there's really no such thing as a bipartisan race here. But yeah, you can tell at the school board meetings exactly who's on what team.
Mm-hmm.
You can certainly tell. You could tell this during this present difficulty. You could tell this while we were trying to keep guns out of the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Who was part of what party? Everything here is politically polar.
Do you see that showing up in your classroom?
I see that showing up in the classroom in what I can teach and what I can't, for sure. The kids aren't so bad. The kids are really not difficult because, and you know, at the high school age, you're going to have kids who have already made up their mind where they are. And I teach them that there's no political line. There's actually a graph.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these places you can be with you can be left libertarian, right libertarian. You can be all over the place. And we even look at that in the classroom. And I know it doesn't sound like part of English, but it is, because without it, it's really hard to read Henry David Thoreau. If you think of politics and political philosophy as being on a line, because you keep thinking, he's right Oh, he's left. No, he's right. No, he makes no sense. So we let that. And I tell him, I don't care where you stand on this graph, as long as when we talk, we can do so respectfully and factually. And if you have an idea and you say, I'm not sure how to back that up, I know it's out there somewhere, you just say so. Just don't make stuff up. Just say, I'm not sure how to prove that. Let me look at it. Give me a day. Like, cool. Okay, maybe you're right. Well, I've been wrong. Ask my kids; they'll tell you that. I've been wrong. That's fine. So the kids really aren't the difficulty. It's the parents.
Yeah, and as in my classroom, as we have these very difficult conversations, and I agree with you. I think the students are much more nuanced and capable of navigating these complex issues than a lot of people give them,
Oh yeah.
including their own parents.
Oh, I'd say especially their own parents. I spend more time with them than parents do. Not all of them, and of course, I'm not impugning all parents at all,
No, but I
but a
mean,
lot of those
if
kids.
you look at hours per day over the course of their however many years they're in school, teachers spend more time with students than their
Hmm.
parents do, for sure. What I'm finding challenging um, over the past, especially the past few years, is this question of proper sourcing, finding facts. What is a fact? How do we know what is true?
Right.
Needing to go to multiple sources, and so like, how do you help guide your students through that process of trying to delineate between fact versus opinion versus completely made up?
Well, we start with Spock. we we start with Spock. Um, his quotes on logic. We move to Asimov, and then we end up with Ellison. Um, Ellison, when he says, "You are not entitled to your opinion. You are entitled to your informed opinion. No one is entitled to be ignorant." And from there, we go into something which takes longer than most people might think, but a discussion, a practice of what is a primary source, what is a secondary source, what is a tertiary source, which I usually refer to as crap. We learn to recognize biases on the internet, biases, whether something we learn to follow the money. I don't care, whether it's right or left. Look to see who's paying. How often has the site been updated? How old is this material? You can use it historically, but maybe you don't want to use it to prove something going on today. Everything has its uses, and we go over what those are, how to tell one type of source from another. And I don't accept anything that's not backed up. And you can be wrong. You can prove something that I feel you're completely wrong, and you may even use a source incorrectly. I don't care. And I'll sit with you and I'll show you how to correctly use the source. But you're heading in that direction. What more can I ask from a student?
So why do you think parents, and this is kind of blending some of these difficult conversations about book banning or the content that we're teaching in our classrooms, why do you think there are so many parents who are nervous with the idea of teachers challenging some of these ideas that they might be exposed to at home, or just teaching critical thinking in general? Why do you think that makes some parents uncomfortable?
I have theories, but I don't know that my theories are worth anything. I believe some of them are afraid that they're going to lose their place in this country, and the kids won't be able to be part of the good fight to keep their privileged positions because the bulk of these kids whose parents I have are having difficulties are wasps.
Do you find yourself in the midst of that most recent conversation that the governor is really pushing back against this idea of critical race theory or of race being taught in schools?
Yeah. If you read the text of the Stop Woke Act, it's you can't teach that racism exists, whether it's purposeful or non-purposeful, whether it's conscious or unconscious. That you may have a bias one way or the other. You can't even talk about that. I don't know how you'd get through a psychology class.
Sure. Well, and of course the Stop Woke Act includes language about emotional wellness and all of those sorts of things. So heaven forbid teachers actually can care about whether or not students are mentally healthy and things like that. But
At the same time, that every 2 weeks we need to take an entire class period to discuss one of, I think it's 12 aspects of social emotional health.
so no contradictions here.
None whatsoever. None whatsoever.
So tell me about your GoFundMe. What is it that you're trying to accomplish with the Put Banned Books back in students' hands GoFundMe?
I want to make them available. I understand that many of our students are in lower socioeconomic groups. If they can't get the books at school, many of them can't get the books. Want to make sure that they are available to them. These are, in literature, these are documents which are often seminal. They are important as far as critical thinking goes. For some of these students, these books are critical to their exploration of their own lives. I want to make sure they have them available. It's going to be age appropriate. I want to make sure the kids, if they're there on their own, they're 16 or older. 11th and 12th grade. If they're not, I want to see a parent or guardian. I'm all for parents knowing what a student is reading. Absolutely.
So to get a little bit into some educational philosophy here, do you think that this is kind of coming up against a fundamental question about what the role of teachers is in the United States and in public education, or more broadly, what the function of public education is?
The purpose of public education has been and continues to be the creation of a literate, intelligent electorate, capable of reading the materials they need to read and then casting an intelligent, well thought, critically responsible vote. This is why we have public schools. It is not to make mothers happy, not to make fathers happy. I actually ask kids, hey, what do you think the purpose of public school is? Oh, to give us a place to be during the day so mom and dad can work. These days, you may not be wrong about that. That's not why it was started. Why do we have public school? So kids can have good jobs. Nope. So kids can be happy. Nope. To make society better. No, by extension maybe, but no. So you can read well enough to vote. That's it. That's why I originally went to 6th grade. Passed that, passed the test, it was free. Keep passing tests. In Mr. Jefferson's school, you could go on forever as long as you passed the test. You didn't? You can pay. Or you can go back to the farm, the bank, whatever it was that your parents do. That's why we have this.
How did you get into education? I get
Accidentally.
How does that work?
How that works is I couldn't get into University of Florida for the degree I wanted because how dare I had a family.
Mm-hmm.
They were very clear. So the only recourse left to me to get my master's at that point was to go to Nova Southeastern in a cohort program, and there's no complaint about Nova at all. They have the program, they made it available, they work around everything. It was great. I got my master's in education, double major, literature and cross-cultural communications. We planned on going overseas and teaching English to speakers of other languages and just traveling around. Then my wife decided to go to medical school. And I left it for a while when she opened her practice, and I'm back in it again.
How are your feelings now versus then? Second go around.
Oh, it's vastly different. Vastly different. Now it's ulcerating. The stress, the constant daily fight or flight, the manifold challenges from parents, wondering what you can say, what you can't say. How can you teach seminal documents in American history without ever coming across as having anything to say that's not anything but glowing about America?
Mm-hmm.
How can you ever do this honestly? As an academic, it would be impossible. The Slaughterhouse-Five is being challenged in our schools. Challenge has resulted in a de facto ban. I've been emailed to take it off of my shelves, out of circulation. I met with at another school with a media specialist who was told it had to come off of her shelves. The reason that they want it gone is because it is these are their thoughts, of course, pornographic. They are also quite upset with the picture he describes of the pony. And worst of all, he questions Christianity. But obviously, Family Guy's okay.
So where do you go from here? So you've got this GoFundMe going. You're going to start purchasing books to make available to students. Are you going to try to keep this going for as long as possible? Are you kind of gearing up for a mission?
I will keep it going until the money runs out.
Any last thoughts before I close out here? Anything you want to include just about this bigger picture idea of parent influence on teaching book bans? There
are a few things I want to say this shortly. One being, how dare you call yourselves Moms for Liberty? How dare you? And as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, how dare they try to peg me with the groomer label? As far as Vonnegut, and I want to point this out as often as I can, these people who claim that they are so patriotic. Kurt Vonnegut was a decorated combat infantry veteran who lived through the firebombing of Dresden, along with how many possible people could live through that? I mean, a minuscule number of people lived through that. He was a POW. How dare they take his understanding of war and consign it to pornography? Where is the honor for our veterans in that? And I state there is none. There is no honor in that whatsoever. And if Moms for Liberty think, if they're going to be telling other kids what they can and can't read, take the time to discuss with your kids what they're reading, what you want them to read, what you don't want them to read. Take that on yourself. Don't push that on other people. Have those discussions with your kids. And if you are afraid the kids are going to read this in the classroom, they're going to get this stuff somewhere else. It's like sex education. Would you rather them get it off the internet, or would you rather have it in the classroom? Because I'd much rather them read The Bluest Eye in a class where we can discuss it in context than to have a kid reading it on the bus on the way home or under the covers. I'm capable of walking them through it. That's all I gotta say.
Adam, thank you very much. It's been an honor and a pleasure to meet with you and speak with you.
Thank you.
Adam's frustration and anger are clear, and not without reason. It's one thing to be challenged as a professional. It's another to be insulted and demeaned. But the truth is, the most disappointing aspect of all of this is that the students and young people supposedly at the center of this argument are not present in it at all. Ask a teacher why they keep coming back each year, and most of the time the response you'll hear is because of the students. The well-being of their children is why these gardens are up in arms, they claim. Why don't the students get a say? One listener of the podcast reached out to ask a question.
I guess the thing I'm curious about, although I think I know the answer, is if any banned books have ever perpetuated or continued some of the harmful elements of the status quo, or if they've only exclusively targeted like marginalized representation, alternative ways of thinking or living, and that kind of thing.
To this, I cannot give a specific answer, but let's read the 10 most frequently challenged books over time and the reasons why. 1984 by George Orwell. Reasons: pro-communism ideas and sexuality. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Reason: racism. The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Reasons: offensive language, unsuited for certain age groups. The Color Purple by Alice Walker. Reasons: offensive language, sexually explicit, unsuited for certain age groups. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Reasons: reference to drugs, sexuality, and profanity. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. Reason: sexually explicit. Lord of the Flies by William Golding. Reasons: profanity, sexuality, racial slurs, and excessive violence. Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. Reasons: offensive language, racism, violence. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Casey. Reasons: profanity, unsavory theme, sexuality, and racism. Finally, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Reasons: offensive language and racism. I want to sit with that last book for a moment. To Kill a Mockingbird is nearly ubiquitous in upper middle or lower high school classrooms for many reasons. It's a book about siblings coming of age, about an upstanding father standing up for the good of the oppressed. It presents an interesting and complex plot about local lore and legends, and because it presents racism in a mostly believable, if not accurate way. It's a book that addresses complex issues, but in a safe way. Yet the reasons why the book is challenged, because it contains offensive language, specifically the N-word, and because it portrays racism. It's a book that takes place in Alabama during the Great Depression. If it didn't portray racism or the use of offensive language, then I would question its quality and merit as a book worthy of study. Again, there are issues present worthy of discussion in this book, especially that of the elevation of white saviors. But teachers address this issue in the context of the narrative, pointing out the problem of this trope in works written by white writers about communities of color. Yet, look at the other major reasons for books are being challenged: violence, profanity, sexuality. Actually, if we look to the most challenged books of 2021, the top 3: Gender Queer by Maya Kobabe, Lawn Boy by Jonathan Evison, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. All of them were challenged because of their portrayal of LGBTQIA+ content. The listener's question asked if there have been books that have been banned because they glorify racism or atrocities or any other number of awful things, and of course I would say no, because the vast majority of teachers would not choose those books, or if they used those materials, it would be specifically to highlight their problems. Have the conversations. Don't hide them. I will end this episode with one final comment from a listener who makes the argument for the value of books that are challenging. Their words can speak for them.
As an immigrant, books provided me with cultural and historical context that I could have not otherwise had. They helped me to learn to communicate my thoughts, my feelings. And I think growing up in a lower working class family, we never traveled, we never went to museums, we couldn't afford to. We even lacked a car too. Books were an avenue through which to explore the world beyond my own four walls, and later, a way to really begin healing from trauma. Today, I feel extremely grateful for the many banned books that I read and shaped my understanding, even those that I philosophically disagreed with. So let's be clear, many of the books that aren't banned contain racist, sexist, xenophobic, homophobic, and transphobic messaging. They purposefully erase the ugly parts of American history. So how do we learn to avoid the mistakes of our ancestors if we're not even taught that they were mistakes? We don't. Plain and simple. Banning books is essentially the unconstitutional act of limiting a type of freedom of speech and expression. It's a way of limiting the right to protest because art has always and will always be a form of resistance against the status quo and oppressive forces.
As always, if you have a comment or question, please feel free to contact me via social media, by email at finloslives@gmail.com, or leave a voice message at finloslives.com. I will include links for various articles and additional readings relating to this topic at finloslives.com. Thanks for listening.